Welcome back to the World Economic Forum Annual Gathering 2026. And for this interesting session, can Europe compete on clean power? Now, for the next 45 minutes, we're going to be discussing this, well, billion euros question. Fragmented markets, high energy costs and slow permitting are squeezing European industry while global competitors surge ahead. Deeper market integration, smarter, different regulation and faster grid investment could cut costs and revive growth. No, yet progress for the moment is still dragging. Can Europe commit to turning the energy transition into a source of competitiveness for the bloc, or will it continue to fall behind? This is what we're going to be discussing this afternoon at the World Economic Forum in Davos with our speakers, and also we will have the opportunity to get the questions from the audience who are here with us in the room by the end of the session. Let's go straight to it, and it is my great honor to introduce the speakers. Here with us we have Fatih Birol, Executive Director, International Energy Agency. Thank you for being here. Bogdan, Minister of Energy of Romania. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Borg, President and Chief Executive Officer, Vattenfall Sweden International Business Council. Thank you for being here. And Kıvanç, Zaimler, Chief Executive Officer and Board Member, Sabancı Holding, Turkey Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders. Thank you for being here. My name is Sasha, Vakulina. I'm Euronews correspondent, and I'm going to be moderating the session for the next 45 minutes. I would like to open the floor with a bit of a wide and more vague question, and Mr. Birol, I would like to start with you, please, on it. Europe is quite often criticized for being too slow, for taking too much time for certain decisions. I would like to ask you, how do you see Europe's clean energy transition when it compares with global competitors?
So I will not give a broad answer to your question about the Europe is being criticized being too slow, because I don't agree.
You don't agree that Europe is being...
I don't agree. Today Europe's the share of clean energy in Europe is 70%. And the global average is 40%. So if you were too slow, Europe, it wouldn't be there. This is one part, but in general there is a bit of a Europe bashing around, and I think one has to look at different parameters about Europe. Of course, as every country, every region in Europe has its own challenges, deficiencies, difficulties, but sometimes it's going too far, I should say, especially when it comes to clean energy. Europe has 70% of Europe's electricity comes from clean power, and global average is 40%. The problem in Europe is, in my view, is not only the share of the clean energy, but the price of electricity. Price of electricity is Europe very high compared to, I don't know, the competitors such as US, such as China, 3-4 times higher than those regions, those countries, and as such, a major challenge for the competitiveness of European industry, especially for the electricity energy-intensive industries. I want to go one step back. I think Europe, why we are here, this challenge of the electricity prices in Europe is we make, in my view, in Europe, two strategic mistakes when it comes to power, and we are paying the cost of it. Number one, end of 1990s, the share of nuclear power in Europe was over 30%. And then European countries, almost all of them, turned their back to nuclear power, either phase out or didn't build nuclear power and stop, and very soon this 30% comes down to about 15%. And now many of them is changing their policies late, but better that it never happened. The last example is Bundeskanzler Merz last week said that it was a strategic mistake for Europe. I am very happy to say that, because throughout my all my visits to Berlin, I get a lot of bruise of saying that Germany made a mistake, big mistake, and German industry is paying for that. This is number one mistake. Number two, when you look at the world today, in the year 2025, of all the new power plants installed in the world, 2/3 were solar power. 2/3 of all and the rest, wind, I don't know, coal, nuclear power, gas and everything, but 2/3 solar power. And today, one country, China, manufactures 80% of the solar panels. Now, coming back to Europe, I can tell you that when we go back 20 years, it was Europe who started the solar story. The first subsidies are paid by Germany, Spain, Italy and others, and Europe started the solar journey, but after a while Europe dropped the ball, China took it over, and China is today the major solar panel manufacturer of the world. So these two mistakes costed Europe a lot, and now what do we have to do in Europe? I think we have to see that when we look at the security of energy in Europe, Europe's other the goals such as reaching our climate goals, but also at the same time being affordable, I see one future for Europe: electrify everything. As much as you can, electrify everything, transportation, industry and so on. And for this, Europe needs the electricity master plan, how we are going to electrify it. And in order to do that, we have to do two things, in my view. One, grids. There's a big bottleneck there, we can talk a bit later. And the second, the pricing of electricity. How we are going to price electricity so that we can make it affordable for the consumers, for households, industry. So the way forward is electrifying the European economy as much as we can, and at the same time, to enable to that, we need grids, building of grids, and at the same time making the electricity prices affordable through different tax policies and through different pricing regimes.
Minister, what's your take on this, also from national perspective? How do you see, has Europe dropped that ball, or Europe nowadays is being bashed, as Mr. Birol said, too much?
I think it's crucial for every EU member state and even for the European Union to understand that the most important are decisions based on data, not on ideology. So I give you a short example. For example, in my country, Romania, we have installed around 6 gigawatts on renewables on solar panels. We are getting 1 gigawatt concrete, and with depreciation of between 1 and 3%, in every year, in 10 years, you'll have only 600 megawatts, and we invest more than 3 billion euros in that. And for example, we shouldn't make the same pattern for every EU countries. In Portugal, in Spain, you could use, and is the best way to gain energy from the solar panels. In Norway and Sweden, of course, from another different topics, and from wind. And in Romania, in this moment, I just want to look at our countries, not only in the perspective of the fairy tale of Dracula, which is known, but in the perspective of a country which is the leader in the region. We have natural gas, or the largest gas producer in the European Union. And once you get our energetic security of our country, we are provider of security for Moldova, for Ukraine, for Hungary, from our neighbors from Serbia and from Bulgaria. Meanwhile, if we are speaking about speed, once you need to use 10, 11 years for a bureaucratic approval for a hydropower plant or a nuclear power plant, once you could build it in 3 and 4 years, definitely we have an issue inside of EU. So in that perspective, I'm pretty sure that I'm ready to make that reshuffle and to start with my country, with Romania, to discuss very clear about the bureaucratization and to cut off all that stuffs that are blocking us to make more energy. In this moment, doubling the resource of energy now in Europe and in Romania is the only way to bring out and to bring down the prices of the energy. We're paying, in my country, related with the income of the people, the highest price of energy in the entire European Union. We are in the same bubble with Hungary, with Bulgaria and with Greece. And we are all together to work and to have a strong voice at the Brussels level with Dan Jorgensen, the European Commissioner, and to start to make strong investment in grid, as Mr. President Fatih Birol said before, because we need to diversify our resources, not only in renewables. I want, and to have the good alliance of friends of nuclear. I want to use EU resources to finance nuclear. We have a huge history of nuclear. 20 to 25% of my country production are getting from the nuclear. To get to hydropower plants, that's one of the best ways to bring cheap and baseline energy. And in that perspective, I just want to look at Romania as a country which starts to make that shift, based on data, not on ideology, and making Romania a country which are not depending by the imports, a country which have as much energy to use and to bring to our neighbors. We'll have a strong Romania, a strong Bulgaria, a strong Greece, a strong Hungary, and so on will bring a strong European Union. Otherwise, if you're stuck in some ideas that everyone should put only wind or only solar panels, definitely we have an issue.
That's one of the major aspects when we talk about the strategic autonomy that the European Union is envisioning when it comes to the energy sector.
It's not, in my perspective, when I speak about energy, it's not about molecules or physics. It's about freedom of people. It's about democracy. And for example, we have that Russian blackmail, Moldova, Ukraine, starting with 2020, 2021, the entire Europe. And in this moment, daily I receive requests from Moldova and from Ukraine to help them and to support them to don't bring in a blackout in Ukraine. So we are making that, and we're a security provider for the region. But to have that role more, we should bring out all that bureaucratic procedures. To keep it what we should keep, but we need speed. We are competing, we are in a world competing with China, which have one of the most affordable prices of energy, with the Middle East side. Now we have our strategic partners from US with LNG and the vertical corridor to provide enough LNG for the entire Central and Eastern Europe to feed our industry. So in that matter should be very smart and very clear. And I'm ready to start with my country. I don't to give example for others. Start with Romania.
Yeah, Ms. Borg, what's your take on this, especially when Fatih Birol and Minister just mentioned the speed that is needed and is not that there. You have a different perspective of that, right? What's your take?
I think that although the topic for this conversation is if Europe can compete with clean power, I think that the question is rather the opposite. If we can compete in an economy that is based on fossil fuels, exactly due to what Fatih said, that fossil fuels are much more expensive in Europe than they are in the US and China, because there is simply much more domestic production in US and China. So we are still importing 90% of the fossil fuels we are consuming in Europe, and we're doing that at a value of 400 billion euros every year. So I think that, it's very difficult to be competitive on those premises. And at the same time, I'm very hopeful, because I think we are moving in a quite high pace, and Fatih gave some good examples of how fast this transition is happening, and that is only over the last 20 years. And we are actually living in the middle of that transition. And we have been reshaping our business, but also the markets that we are active in. And although that reshaping in Europe has been so far a lot around offshore wind, onshore wind, a bit of solar as well, etc. I think that we really need to leverage the strengths we have in order to do this much faster. And that's also when the benefits come, because we have seen the sort of rapid scaling of some of these technologies. And if you take offshore wind, for example, just in the last 10 years, we have seen the cost go down with 25%, and the output has been threefolded compared to what it was before. Now we need to add also other technologies like nuclear. So even though we are one of the sort of largest providers of offshore wind in Europe and building quite a lot of it, we are also building new nuclear. We are operating existing nuclear plants today, but we are also now into a project where we will build new nuclear in the shape and form of small modular reactors, which are not so small, by the way. They are either 300 megawatts each or 470 megawatt each, looking at the suppliers that we still have. And it's only by volume and scale that we can get the same kind of cost curve in that development. So we will need all the fossil-free technologies that we can get our hands on, but it is important to understand that European economy can in the long run only be competitive if we phase out the fossil fuels. And I think that we actually have really good prerequisites to do that from more than an energy perspective, because this energy is going to be used by industrial players and by households in the end. And I think we have some leading industrial players in clean tech in Europe that we can scale in order to make the demand there, because we will never be able to afford to subsidize all of this power into the market. We need to have sound businesses that can use and want to use this energy in order to build their value chains. And that can be in steel, in cement, in car manufacturing, in heavy transportation, or in other industrial areas where we actually have a lot of lighthouse projects already today. So I'm very optimistic when it comes to not only being able to transform the energy system, but to actually be able to unlock all the business opportunities that that will provide. I think that sometimes there is a discussion around whether there is a green bubble or not. And I think it's important to say that large technological shifts or transformations, they are rarely straightforward. Of course, there will be a bit of ups and downs, but the direction is very clear. And the bubble is not green, it's brown. You know, the fossil fuels will not be there in the end. So if you're looking for a bubble, that's where you need to look. I fully respect that this transition will take time and have its challenges, but that is where we will end up. And I think to do that and scale fast enough then, back to your origin of the question and the scaling, I think that we need to steer away from this brown bubble and make sure that we can lead rather than lag. And three things are needed to do that. We need stable and credible policy frameworks, because that will reduce the risks for all of us investing in this business, and it will unlock capital that are willing to go in here. And I know that because we speak to the capital market basically every week, and we know what it takes in order for them to invest in our projects. Secondly, we need to remember that we are not just building assets, we are building systems. So we need to make sure we don't put all our efforts into one part of the system, only to the clean industries, or only into electricity generation, or only into grids. But I agree that grids goes first right now. So we need to sort of make sure we have a system perspective. And lastly, we need to safeguard efficient markets, because only that will provide sound business models, cross value chains in the end, and that's how you build prosperous, competitive businesses going forward. So I think we have all the prerequisites to do that, but we need to do it.
And we need to do it faster than it is happening. Mr. Zaimler, on this opening point, I want to hear your view regarding the importance, you know, of making it faster when it comes to Europe's competitiveness, and whether Europe is lagging too much, whether it dropped too much the ball, or if there is still room to pick it up, you know.
Thank you. I want to bring three of my takeaways from Davos to the session. First one is the middle powers, in this fragmented and polarized world, the importance of middle powers. Secondly, the power shift to east. And thirdly, we should never give up from net zero targets. I mean, we should not look short term. It is a long term commitment. So these are the things I want to bring to the session. While asking why I am here, I find two reasons maybe. Turkey is economically an integrated part of Europe. We live together, but we don't have the ring. And secondly, I'm representing Sabancı Holding, which is on both sides, both end of the value chain. we are the largest power generator and distributor. On the other hand, we are the largest energy consumer, the customer with our industries. And in both ends, we have reputable joint ventures with European partners like E.ON on the energy, other partners in industry, and we generate, but we also consume. So the prices, all the market conditions are valid for us. And when I look at Turkey, it is one of the top 3, sometimes 5 largest power and gas markets. A huge market with 85 million population. Only the power growth expectation is 3.4 until 2035. I think this is much more above than European expectation. And in the meantime, we are one of the largest importers of oil and gas, a net importer from Russia, Iran and Azerbaijan through the pipelines. So this pushes us to invest more and more to our internal resources. So over the last 10 years, Turkey has reached 25 gigawatt of solar and 13 gigawatt of wind, and the target for 2035 is reaching 120 gigawatt of solar and wind altogether. And this requires only for the capacity $80 billion, plus the additional transmission and grid investments, the number goes up to 120. And there we have to be pragmatic. I mean, before the session, I heard the word from Minister, the pragmatism. This is what we have to do in this world. I will also bring it to Europe, because Turkey has speed up the permission processes. We have now a super permit process, and we are looking to efficiency both in generation and consumption. Fatih mentioned about the prices, about affordability of prices, but supply security and also the green energy, so-called, has also a cost. I think high prices are manageable. We can manage the high prices as long as they are predictable. Because what we don't like, the volatility of the prices. When I say we as the power generators and we as the industry. Because both sides have to give their decisions with predictable numbers, which means I think there is enough capacity in Turkey as well as in Europe for more capacity. But what we need is an energy system with much more digitalized, much more smart solutions, such as storages, smart grids, demand-side managements. This is what we need. We have to manage the system, not only by investing additional capacity. Yes, we have to be fast. Turkey as well as the entire Europe. I see also culturally difference also between Europe and Turkey, as I feel we are more on the pragmatic side, more agile side. But the scale is important. Europe can also bring the scale. Investment is a must on the grid, on transmission, but we have to also think about the efficiency through digitalization. It's like managing the traffic, not only with additional roads, it's managing the traffic, solving the traffic problems with navigation systems.
You've mentioned permission processes, and this would take us to the issue and the aspect of regulations, right? Which is one of the most important now. Can I ask you to list, like, what are some of the key regulations that you would name as those that are needed to reduce the costs and scale clean power, Minister?
For example, ETS2 for the gas. We find a way together with a few member states, friends, which are using gas, to bring a 3 years delay. For example, for entire market in my country, will bring around 25% a highest price of the gas. So that is unaffordable for industry, and that should be started with 2026. And I think that discussion should be put it in a very pragmatic way about our future of the industry in Europe. And I think that is the best example. For transition fuels, like was the coal before, now we have a penalty which are doubling the price for energy made from coal in my country. So in this moment, I think that it should be very clear about gas to keep the same clear regulation and to keep it in the way that was before, and to take a delay until we take some oxygen to feed our power plants, gas to power plants, and to feed our industry. And that's very clear. And meanwhile, for example, for storage, I'm a huge fan of storage because we installed 6 gigawatts in Romania and we installed 200 megawatts in storage. And now I take the money from the solar panels and I bring it to the storage. And to put a seat, you need 6 months in a practical way. I could make it earlier too, but to take all the approvals, we need more than 1 year. So in that perspective, that's very clear. that for investors, they need very clear to know the terms, to know very well all the regulation according with EU. So I think that is the most important, and is even in the yard of national countries.
Ms. Borg, what do you think regarding the regulations that are needed? Would you name as the key ones?
You know, regulation is important in order to speed up, and I think there are things to be done. For example, make sure that the same things are not tested in several regulations. We end up with that sometimes when we want to build something, that first you have to get an approval according to one regulation and then to another, and they are overlapping and looking at the same things, but you can get different results. And it also takes a long time because it's not a clear set of priorities of what actually needs to happen from a more holistic perspective. For example, when it comes to energy infrastructure related to security or other things. But I also think it's important to say it's not just individual regulations. The most important thing is probably stable regulatory and policy frameworks that are long-term, because these investments are made in order to be there for many decades. And the best thing that we can do from a European perspective is to keep an alignment between the countries so that the policy is not differing too much between countries, because you need to be able to act on a large market to sort of unlock the economics of this, and then be really clear on what the targets are until, for example, 2040, and make sure we follow that trajectory. Because the risk right now, discussing back and forth what it's going to be or not, and are we going to sticking to it or not, that creates uncertainty. Uncertainty is risk in the investment market, and then, you know, investors will hesitate. So I would say that clear policy frameworks that are long-term is probably the most important thing. And then we need all the sort of lightening of the speed in the regulation as well.
Would you like to add to that? Because I saw you were agreeing with...
No, I was smiling because I have a European partner operating in Turkey, but apart from this, we invest also in the United States, in renewable. And I have experienced all the permission processes. Europe has the longest permission or process time from zero to build a new renewable plant in terms of permissions, all the process. We are trying to make it faster, but we are still faster in Turkey than Europe. But in USA, I have an experience in 1.5 years, because the system, the regulation, is more on awarding. I mean, when we think about the carrot and the stick, I see more motivation in US to speed up compared to Europe. This was my experience. That's what I smiled, actually.
Mr. Birol, what do you think on that, with the regulation aspect?
We definitely need to, in Europe, simplify the processes. Simplification of time. I cannot argue that we should completely abolish the regulation. We should make it simpler and faster, both the licensing and permitting. But I also want to say one more thing. We say clean energy, and I think we should agree that clean energy includes renewables, but also nuclear power. Clean energy is also for Europe secure energy. It is for the electricity security, because they are renewable energy is homegrown. You don't. I mean, if I put a solar panel on the roof of my how shall I say, my apartment, my house, my neighbor can do it as well. I am not stealing from him or her. So this is it's a homegrown, and therefore, for when we talk about the energy security, I think one of the solutions to energy security is the renewable energy together with nuclear energy. This is one issue. The second, why I'm insisting on the grids, is the following. I want to give one number which is, in my view, very shocking, at least for me. Last year in Europe, we have installed it was a record, 80 gigawatts of renewable capacity. This is a good news. But you know what is the worst news? More than 400 gigawatts of renewable capacity was ready, but as there was no grid, we couldn't connect to the grid, and it didn't go to the households or the factories. This is completely crazy. This is economically, it doesn't make sense at all, because of it's like Kıvanç talk about the roads and streets. It's like you built the nicest car, very fast, very nice looking, very efficient and everything, but you forget to build roads for that. So we built the power plants, but we don't have transmission and lines and grids. This is the biggest problem today in Europe, and of course, building these grids, the Commission has a new grids package. I hope it will see the light of the day, and this will be deblock many of the problems that we are facing. It is the main, in my view, barrier in front of the electrification of European economy.
Thank you. Let's see if we have a few questions from the audience already. Can we have a microphone here? No, first madam behind you, please. We're going to give you the microphone if you could wait a second.
Okay.
You could stand up.
My name is Tatiana San Miguel from ArcelorMittal. It's a steel manufacturing company. And I would like to address my question to all panelists to hear their different perspectives. The European electricity market is based on marginal pricing, which means the market price is set by the most expensive generator, often natural gas, as Anna referred to the electricity cost curve. We are still very much reliant on natural gas in the EU as an energy carrier. Is it possible to reduce the price of natural gas, considering the phasing out of gas may still take quite some time?
I can say a few things to you, and one good news and one solution. Good news has nothing to do with Europe. Good news is the following. Natural gas prices, international natural gas prices are coming down. In last Davos year, I said we are going to see, when we come here, 2026, natural gas prices will come down, because huge amount of LNG is coming from US, Canada, Qatar and elsewhere, and in the last year it went down by 20%. It's very good. And next years it will go down, because the markets will turn from the markets of sellers to the buyers. This is a good news. But this will give a relief to the Europeans, where how we set the electricity prices based on natural gas prices, but this will not be a lasting solution. This will give a breathing space to Europeans. In my view, there is a need to give a second look whether or not we should price our electricity based on gas prices, or we should look at some alternatives here. Maybe it is time to give a second look at this established thing.
Maybe one perspective on that, because I think the main problem is that we still have the gas in the European energy system, so the cost will be there. The question is how you take it out in the best way, if it's the market mechanism or something else. Personally, I believe that the best way of getting that component out is to reduce the dependence on gas, because then the market will reflect reality. And I still think that market is the best mechanism of dispatching resources. And having said that, I want to make an addition, because I think that the market mechanism we have is really good at dispatching the assets that we have. But it is an energy-only market pricing, and it doesn't take into consideration the value that is brought to the market, for example, from nuclear, when it comes to providing the stability in the grid, or taking care of the volatility or flexibility needed when you feed something into the grid. So I think that in order, and it doesn't work as an investment signal in that way, because it's also short term. You have a price point somewhere between 3 to 5 years out in time, but the investments we make are 30 or 40 or 50, or in the case of nuclear, 80 years. So there is no investment signal in the market for anything else than energy only. And therefore we need other instruments. And I would like to give one example, because I think that the risk-sharing model for nuclear that the Swedish government is now providing to us as investors and energy operators is very, very valuable, because that takes into consideration both the pricing of the energy, the risk that you take, but also the value that the nuclear is bringing to the market. And that makes it possible for private market investors to invest in this project. And if I can just say one word about that, we are building a cluster of small modular reactors at the site where we already have traditional large-scale reactors. And as I said before, they're not very small, but since they are smaller than the regular ones, built on the modular approach, and we're building them in cluster, we are counting on also getting the price for the fleet down and be able to enable more investments in clusters like this going forward. And the fact that that risk-sharing model is there is the reason we can go forward with this project. It's also the reason that we have been able to partner up with an industry consortium consisting of 9 large industrial companies that have a global business, but many of them have a big business or are originating from Sweden. And they are actually now buying 20% of this project from us and investing their money into this project. And I think that's mechanism that will unlock the investments needed in the energy system. And the solution will look slightly different depending on what kind of technology or market we are talking about.
Minister.
I refer to the Central and Eastern Europe countries because in this moment we are cut off the resources from Russia, the gas from Russia. We are the largest producer of gas in the European Union, Romania, and in this moment we are playing to figure a way how we could bring more resources of gas and LNG from US through the vertical corridor in Greece, in Bulgaria, Romania, and to our neighbors. And for example, once we have more liquidity in the market, definitely we'll figure out how to bring down the price, because I take a very clear example. In 1975, 70% of the energy from the world were supplied by the fossil fuels, gas and oil. Today, in 2026, now, we are getting 84% from fossil oil. So I think that market will grow and will grow and will grow. And once we have more resources, definitely we can speak about a way that to bring down the prices. I give the example in my country. In 2022, we have a huge spike of the price of energy, and the government said to close that margin around 25 euros per kilowatt and per megawatt. And in this moment, we're ready to bring out that measure because we have in the market lower prices than the cap which are setting 4 years ago. So once you get more liquidity, definitely go down with the prices. And we diversify our source of gas. We are not more dependent only by Russian gas.
Do you want to pick up on that?
I agree with all the comments, especially in the integration of the markets. Europe is well connected, and Turkey is also connected through gas and power. Yes, the merit order in the market price mechanism has been criticized also during this COVID period, and there has been some technology-based cap pricing has been applied. I think it is not about the price level only. It's about the predictability, because we are also sitting on both ends, generating power, so we invest in power generation, but we invest in the heavy industries with high energy consumption. And there we have to also calculate the cost. What we need is predictability, and it comes from the liquidity, and it comes in a bigger scale, the prices go down. So I value, that's why the importance of the integration of the markets. And definitely, as a last word, I mean, grid is the key, is the really backbone of the solution.
Let's take one more. Yeah, we have a question here from the first row. Can you wait a second, please? We're going to bring you the microphone, and I'm going to ask you to stand up and introduce yourself, please. Could you stand up, please?
I am Debasis from NTPC, India. Yeah, my question is, how do you see green ammonia as a source of clean power for Europe?
Could you repeat
Green
that?
ammonia.
Sorry?
Green ammonia.
Okay.
Yeah. Green hydrogen from there.
Yeah, okay.
As a storage, you mean?
As a source of energy.
Well, I think we will not use ammonia in order to sort of enlarge the electricity system. Ammonia will, of course, be used in industrial processes or in the shipping industry. And I know that there are a lot of projects going on in relation to producing also green ammonia. And of course, a lot of green electricity, or fossil-free electricity rather, I would like to use that word rather than green, because I think nuclear is, you can debate forever if that's green or not, but it's definitely fossil-free, and I think we're going to need all the fossil-free technologies we can get our hands on. So a lot of fossil-free electricity is going to be needed to produce that ammonia. So in that way, it is connected, and I think that we will for sure see a market for that. To what extent Europe will be competitive there or not compared to other parts of the world where that development is also going on, that remains to be seen, I think.
There's a major cost issue for at the moment. Maybe in the future the cost will come down, but there's a major cost gap for green ammonia for the time being.
And you need a huge amount of energy to produce, and maybe to put in the plant nearby to power plant. And I totally agree with Mr. Birol. You should check very clear, like the hydrogen, if it's economically efficient or not, or if they have the perspective to be efficient or not.
As the co-chair of Advanced Energy Solutions, we are open to all new technologies. But this morning we have discussed about the proof of pilots. I think the cost is the biggest challenge in front of ammonia.
We're going to take one more question in the third row. If you could just wait the microphone, if we could have here, please, for the madam. Could I ask you to stand?
Thank you so much for a very engaging discussion. My name is Marina Romanello, and I'm the Executive Director for the Lancet Council on Health and Climate Change, so I work at that intersection. And I wanted to suggest another dimension to this discussion that I think is often overlooked, but I find is hugely important, that is energy as a fundamental health service. Globally, we see about 3.5 million deaths that come from the burning of dirty fuels. But we've made a lot of progress in terms of reducing that mortality. Since the 1990s, we've seen that go down, and today we've saved about 160,000 deaths every year because mostly of the phase down of coal use, especially in Eastern Europe, that has made huge progress. Those benefits are never taken into account when we think about investments in the energy sector. That has a lot of economic implications in terms of huge burden of disease, particularly in Europe with an aging population with chronic conditions. It has also implications for absenteeism, and it impacts the whole economy and the well-being pathways. So you might not have any answer to this, but I'm wondering whether you've thought of, you had any discussions around how could those benefits be internalized when we make decisions about the future of energy, and how could those costs be returned to those investments that really benefit health and sustainable development. Thank you.
So in fact, we talk about climate change, but air pollution, local pollution, a major issue, definitely in Europe. But I would be not telling the truth if I say Europe is the region which suffers the most from the air pollution, local pollution. In fact, for example, India is one of the countries which suffers a lot. And in addition to that, if you ask me what is the most important, the energy-related health issue today is the primitive way of cooking in African countries. 4 out of 5 families in Africa use wood, agricultural waste, animal waste for cooking, which in turn is a major problem for the lungs of the women and children. And this is one of the 2 major reasons for premature death of women in Africa. Every year, 500,000 women die prematurely because of this primitive way of cooking. But in Europe, it is mainly coal use in some countries, but we are, I guess, especially in Central Europe, Mr. Minister, we are finding solutions to that using different filters, scrubbers, in order to reduce the impact of it.
And that is, even in the coal industry, we reduce it a lot about that in filters, and even to gas to power. In this moment, we are reaching a new power plants, and you're getting only hot air outside from gas to power. We have a very great technology for that. I check it, all the numbers, and meanwhile, what I think is the problem, because we don't have some walls in the border of Europe or in the border of our countries. If I look on some figures and numbers, we reach a reduction around 20% of CO2 emissions in Germany, and the largest economy in Europe, and the growth more than 20 times in last 20 years of China. And somehow I think what they're making over there are affecting all of us. And meanwhile, we should compete with them in a very industrial and very competitive world market. So it's a very soft balance. I think every country should use their most valuable resources and to keep a standard, but meanwhile, I don't have the luxury to lose our competitiveness in Europe. So that's why I'm a huge fan of nuclear. I'm a huge fan of pragmatism and speed, because despite the fact that I'm the youngest Minister of Energy from Europe, I really believe that our generation will make a clear shift to the next generation, of course using renewables, but using the pragmatism and to have a very, very good legacy for the next generation.
Yes, Ms. Berg? Yes.
I actually would like to say that we have as a strategy to enable fossil freedom, and we are in the midst of a journey of a massive transformation of our company, where we used to be very emission intense and where we are now clearly on the way to net zero for 2040. And I'm not going to dwell on that because that's a seminar of its own. But what I would like to say that is not our sustainability strategy, it's our business strategy. But it is a sustainable business strategy, because I'm absolutely convinced that it will cost to be an emitter in some shape or form. And we might not see the pricing effects of that in the market mechanism all the time, but it will either be there in the shape and form of emission certificates, taxes, or paying for the consequences of climate change. And having said that, we take that into consideration when we make our business cases, but we do that while still making sure that they are profitable in the business environment that we are in today, because only profitable companies can afford to do the investments needed. But the fact is that the green transition is not a sustainability thing. It's about it's about being competitive. It's about defense and security and resilience. It's about environment and health and climate change. And it's about resource efficiency. And if you start to look at all of these perspectives, you can actually find the good business cases where this makes sense, both from a climate and environmental and health perspective, but also from a resource cost and business perspective. And so far, we are actually doing better financially than we did when we had a much higher CO2 footprint.
Yes, please, briefly.
Just one word.
Please.
It's all about humanizing energy, because we need the energy transition for human, for their health, for their wealth, and for their skills, for their development.
Thank you very much for the speakers. Thank you for the audience. Thanks for the questions. We're going to think of those sessions for next time to include them in this expo. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.